This meeting will come to order at 7 p.m. My name is Nate Andrews, Chair of the DRB. Please silence your phones and devices. For Zoom technical questions, contact planning staff through Zoom chat. I'll begin by taking a roll call of DRB members in attendance this evening. Chair is present. Jim Brizzolera.
Present.
Scott Riley is absent. Brian Curtis.
Present.
Matt Fraser.
Present.
Dylan Hornibrook.
Present.
Great, we can do business this evening. The following items are on the agenda. We'll start out with a public forum, and then we'll move into HP 26-05, which is a certificate of appropriateness for a shed at 152 Maple Road in the Village Zoning District. We then have a public hearing for discretionary permit 27-02. Matt Fraser requests a discretionary permit to amend the building envelope and construct an accessory structure at 144 Cherrywood Lane in the agricultural rural residential zoning district. DP 27-01, TransEastern Truck Center requests discretionary permit for the addition of an office at 137 Avenue A in the industrial zoning district. DP 26-08, Richard and Susan Brownell request discretionary permit for the subdivision at 518 Lincoln Hill Road in the agricultural rural residential zoning district. DP 24-06.1, Rivers Edge Development requests discretionary permit to amend and reduce the total dwellings from 107 to 106 and modify the amenities in the Windswept Meadows development on Trails Bend Drive in the residential zoning district. DP 27-03, Developmental Disabilities Housing Initiative requests pre-app review of a 9-dwelling unit building at 12 Southridge Road in the Village Zoning District. The Development Review Board, DRB, follows rules of procedure and conducts quasi-judicial proceedings, aka public hearings like court, pursuant to Williston Unified Development Bylaw, WDB. Chapter 6 and Appendix A. The powers of the DRB are established in and limited by this bylaw, as well as state statute and expounded upon in the staff reports for each public hearing application. As volunteer public officials, we are held to the standards of the Williston Volunteer Policy and the Williston Conflict of Interest Ordinance. For any public hearing item tonight, does any member wish to be excused on account of a conflict of interest?
Yeah, recuse myself from DP 27-02.
All right, perfect. So you'll join the audience for that one and then come back for the others. Does any member wish to report an ex parte contact? Ex parte meaning communicating with or receiving communication from a person in regards to an application on tonight's agenda. Participants are advised that there are specific statutory requirements for becoming an interested party who can appeal a decision. Anyone wishing to be considered an interested party must provide spoken or written testimony and provide their name and mailing address. For more information, see WDB 6.8 and 24 VSA 4465. With that, we will move into public forum. This is an opportunity for members of the public or anyone to address the board with items that are not on tonight's agenda. Hearing none, we will move into our first item, which is a certificate of appropriateness, HP 26-05. Is the applicant here tonight?
I don't believe so, in person or online. These items aren't public hearings, so the applicant does not need to be present.
Okay. We can just move that one to the end of the agenda then maybe, or do you want to, what's your preference?
We can take care of it. It'll be quite
Okay.
quick. So this is 152 Maple Road in the Village Zoning District, and this is a certificate of appropriateness to construct a 10 by 20 shed in the backyard. The recommendation of the Historic and Design Advisory Committee was that this proposal complies as proposed. It's going to be a wood shed with metal roofing, a gravel pad surrounded by landscaping. It's going to be set significantly back from the Maple Road. So the Historic Committee's recommendation was complies as proposed.
Okay. Thank you, Emily. Any questions from the board for Emily on this one?
No, looks like a great shed.
Okay, anything, members of the public, anybody?
A reminder to those on Zoom, you can press the raise hand button or comment in the chat if you would like to provide comment.
All right, I'm not hearing much, so we're gonna move on to, we'll close that certificate of appropriateness at 7:05. Thanks, Brian. And we'll move on to our public hearing. Our first public hearing item, Matt, this looks like the one that you'll be recusing yourself from. It is DP 27-02. Matt Fraser requests discretionary permit to amend the building envelope at 144 Cherrywood Lane in the ARRZD. If the applicants could please state your names and address for the record, and then we'll get into it.
Yeah, Matthew Fraser. My address is 144 Cherrywood Lane in Williston.
Thanks, Matt.
Brian Courier, Larry Burke Civil Associates, 13 Corporate Drive, Essex, project engineer.
Great, thanks, Brian. Staff goes next.
Great. All right, folks, David Maroney, Senior Conservation Planner, speaking for staff. This is DP 2702, discretionary permit application to amend a designated building envelope setback at 144 Cherrywood Lane, which is lot 26 of what was the North Sunset Hill Estates subdivision back in 1987. Property is presently developed with a single-family home and a detached accessory barn, and the proposed setback adjustment primarily is associated with the southern setback, which is currently set at 100 feet, and adjusting that setback would accommodate new residential accessory improvements which are proposed. Staff recommends approval with findings, conclusions, and conditions as drafted. It's the first time the DRB is reviewing the request, and the Conservation Commission weighed in on August 19th. No comment from Public Works and comment from Fire Department, which is excluded. One public comment letter was received in support of this application. All right, so the project elements are relatively straightforward for this application. First, with reference to the first chapter of the bylaw, it's noted that the setbacks in question are also codified and noted in deed covenants and Act 250 permit conditions. And so while this discussion tonight pertains to the DRB's decision on whether to amend this with respect to the town bylaw, it should be noted to the applicant that the applicant may remain subject to private or state restrictions regardless of DRB decision tonight. All right, so this property is located in the ARZD. The current dimensional standards appear to be 15 feet on the eastern and western boundary. The applicant was applying to reduce those from 50 to 15, but that appears to not be necessary. The original plans do appear to show those at 15 feet, which is the minimum setback for the ARZD for side and rear setback lots. No change was proposed to the northern boundary, and the southern boundary is proposed to be changed from 100 feet to a 25-foot setback. So only a couple of things are relevant in terms of landscaping. In the ARZD, the exterior boundary for residential subdivisions, the bylaw calls for ample buffers between neighboring open space subdivisions. That's generally interpreted to require a 50-foot naturally vegetated type 1 buffer at the exterior of a subdivision. So that's going to be the standard recommendation, with exception where maintaining mapped wastewater infrastructure would require a smaller buffer. And where a smaller buffer, narrower than that 50 feet, would be needed to accommodate the accessory structure with respect to table 23.a in chapter 23 of the bylaw, which may allow the substitution of an alternative buffer type to accommodate the structure. All right, this project was reviewed by the Conservation Commission with note that there are significant wildlife habitat areas mapped on the property. However, accessory structures within 150 feet of the existing residential structure are exempt from the need for a habitat disturbance assessment, and adjusting the setback would not in itself prompt the need for a habitat disturbance assessment. Additionally, the proposed structures are located in an area that has no proposed impacts. So no concerns with any of the wildlife habitat mapped on site. And then the other conservation area of note with respect to Williston's bylaw mapping is a corner of a polygon that is mapped from Williston's 1989 visual assessment, which we now refer to as scenic view sheds in the modern bylaw. And the scenic view shed that this setback is partially mapped in is a primary foreground scenic view shed, which is pertinent to a view of Mount Mansfield, which is primarily visible to the east of this location. So it was staff's assessment as well as the Conservation Commission's that there'd be no impact to the mapped scenic view shed by either the setback adjustment or the accessory structures. The second area to really pay just a little bit of attention to is watershed health. So the number of watershed protection buffers that are relevant to the site. There is an unnamed tributary stream which receives a 50-foot setback. That stream is located in the southern main portion of the parcel and is not impacted by the proposal in any way. And then to the north, there are known wetlands, some of which are mapped and some of which are not mapped. However, they've never been delineated. One of the quirks with this permit is that we noticed during review that there is a development on site that partially extends into an area that on the master plans for this subdivision is marked as a no-build zone for the protection of wetlands that's to remain in a natural and undisturbed setting. And so with discussion with the Conservation Commission and staff, it's been proposed that a wetland delineation should really be should be done for this site so that it can be verified whether or not that development is outside of the wetlands and the wetland buffers, and therefore would be permittable under Williston's bylaw. So there is a recommendation that was added to this that that be shown at the final plans in order to accommodate a new permit for this site. That existing area would need to be resolved. So what follows is finding of facts, conclusions of law, and conditions of approval. And in terms of the custom conditions of approval for this, primarily related to 2A and B here, with conditions for the final plans to show state verified wetland delineation or to demonstrate that any part of that existing development that is extending into the northern wetland protection area be allowed to revegetate, and B, where final plans shall show that southern setback as described in the staff report. Any questions for staff?
None right now.
Okay. Matt and Brian, is there anything that you would like to supplement from the staff report? Sounds like you've been through some pretty extensive planning already with conservation and David, but throw anything at us that you'd like.
The only thing I would say is to, in the staff report, it talks about maintaining for a type 1 buffer on the southern line, that it should be 50 feet, but it could be reduced further if we use, I think it's a type 2 or a type 3 that's allowed in this zone. It can be reduced down to 9 feet. We're just asking for 25.
Okay.
And we don't have a strong preference whether it's type 2 or type 3 adjacent to the accessory structure. Happy to ask the neighbor their preference, work with staff, but we would plan to do, I think it's informal or formal plantings are those two type of buffers to reduce it down in that area.
Okay. David, do you have any comments on the buffers?
The type 150-foot buffer is really what is considered standard in the current bylaw for the exterior line for any open space subdivision where it borders another open space subdivision. Lot 26 is located at the exterior border of that existing subdivision, where the lots to the south, where this buffer is a separate subdivision. So that's where that 50-foot standard comes from. In this case, we do think it's reasonable and it is able to be accommodated by the bylaw that it be reduced to one of those type 2 or type 3 buffers in the area where it would be needed to accommodate the building.
Okay, thank you. Anything else from you guys?
I know when I picked up my packet in the staff notes, it was mentioned that there was one letter from a neighbor. Both the southern adjoining properties wrote letters for me, so I'm not sure if the one that is directly adjacent to where the project's going on submitted it to the wrong address or not, but he, very favorable letter. And then the rough sketches we've done, the accessory building is going to be 45 feet from the furthest point is 45 feet from the property line. So there's only a little corner of it that we're trying to get over that 50-foot line.
Got it. Are there any questions or comments from the public? We did receive that letter, I reviewed it. If there's any.
There was supposed to be a second letter?
Yeah. Both the southern neighbors sent me letters and told me that they sent them in. So I have copies of them, but I'm sure they have to come directly from them.
There's a raised hand online.
Oh, there is a raised hand. Jay, I'm going to allow you to speak. You're good to go. Jay, you're good to go. State your name and address for the record, please. Is the volume turned up on your end?
It doesn't look like he's saying anything.
Okay.
Bummer.
Jay, can you type what you were going to say into the chat?
Yeah,
Thank you.
Jay is the neighbor that is
Can you hear me?
adjacent to this.
Jay, we can hear you.
Okay, good. I apologize. The wonders of modern technology and my wife's AirPods connected to the computer and killed my mic. Sorry. My name is Jay Barton. I live at 70 Cherrywood Lane, directly south and adjoining Mr. Fraser's property. I submitted my letter on August 15th at 3:09 p.m. to planning@willistonvt.org. Maybe I'm in the junk folder. A lot of people would say that my comments belong there. A little something for the board. Anyway, I am completely in favor of Mr. Fraser's planned approach. He's been very upfront in communicating with all of his neighbors about his plans, and we've walked the property together. And additionally, there is a line of trees that obscure. I'm pretty sure even when the project is complete, will completely obscure visibility from my house, and I'm probably the closest person to it. So anyway, so we're totally in favor, and we just wanted to speak on his behalf. That's all.
Thank you, Jay.
Yeah, thanks, Jay. And thank you, Matt, for taking the time to reach out to neighbors ahead of time. That's a huge help on this.
We did find the email in the junk folder.
Perfect.
So we can add that to the record for the.
Email and audio file.
Told you that's where I belong.
All right, thanks, Jay. Are there any other comments or questions on this one? If not, we're going to close this hearing at 7:19 p.m. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Back to the other side.
Next up is DP 27-01 TransEastern Truck Center requesting discretionary permit for the addition of an office at 137 Avenue A. Hello, if you could please state your names and addresses for the record.
Yeah, my name's Casey Danforth. I'm 2200 Moncton Road, Moncton, Vermont.
Doug Goulet, 40 Southridge Road, Williston, Vermont, with Bowman Consulting, project engineer.
Thank you both. Staff's up.
Thanks, Nate. This is a request for a discretionary permit to construct an office trailer at 137 Avenue A in the Industrial Zoning District West. The office trailer will be 64 by 23 feet with a 7-space parking lot. The property is currently developed with an existing industrial building and outdoor parking and storage areas. It's about 4.5 acres. This proposal was not subject to design advisory or conservation commission review. Staff recommendation is to take testimony, close the hearing, deliberate, and approve with findings, conclusions, and conditions as drafted. This is the first time the DRB is reviewing the request. Public Works and Fire Departments provided comment. The Public Works comment memo is included as the conditions of approval, and the Fire Department is included with limitations, noting that their plan review standard is a select board policy, not an ordinance, and therefore can only be enforced to the extent that it correlates with the standard of the duly adopted Unified Development Bylaw. There was no comment from the enhanced E911 address coordinator, and no comment letters were received at the time of mailout nor up until this evening. So this site was developed in the 1960s, so there are some non-conforming conditions on the site. The property is vested in legally created development until an amendment is made, and the DRB's power to correct nonconformities is limited to requiring work that is reasonably proportional to the scale of the proposed development. So some of the nonconformities include, but are not limited to, outdoor storage and parking areas within the front yard setback, 3 points of access where consolidated 1 point of access is preferred. The southern point of access is wider than the Public Works specifications for driveway curb cuts, and possibly some development within a wetland or wetland buffer to the rear. What the applicant proposes to do is pave an existing informal gravel parking area, including 2 spaces within the 35-foot front yard setback. And staff recommends that that parking area be built in conformance with the bylaw. So all those other existing non-conforming conditions, the staff recommendation is let them stay as is. If they ever do a more major addition or full-scale site redevelopment, then take into consideration points of access, have a wetlands delineation done. The work that they're doing as part of this application is outside of that wetland area to the rear. The use is allowed in the zoning district, motor vehicle parts dealers, wholesale dealers, and repair and maintenance. As I noted, the front yard setback is 35 feet. And outdoor storage areas are allowed where designated on a site plan. So final plan shall include a site plan for the entire property designating all existing outdoor storage areas, including a notation for non-conforming outdoor storage within the front yard setback. Off-street parking and loading complies with the proposed vehicular parking dimensions and count. So our bylaw standards are very flexible for industrial uses, beginning as 1 space per 1,000 square feet as a starting point. And it varies because industrial uses vary in terms of square footage and number of employees and customers at a facility. Final plans will, however, need to provide 2 short and 1 long-term bicycle parking spaces and 1 end-of-trip facility. An end-of-trip facility is a shower and locker room for employees to use. The DRB may provide a waiver for an end-of-trip facility, but it needs to be requested and presented to the Development Review Board, and the applicant would need to demonstrate that adding that end-of-trip facility would exceed 5% of total project cost. Landscaping, no changes are proposed nor suggested by staff at this time. The property abuts other heavy commercial and industrial uses. So the existing vegetation to the north provides an ample buffer. To the west is wetland and wetland buffer, providing ample vegetation to the west. The south, there is no landscaping, and the gravel parking storage area is very close to the property line. Staff does not recommend a correction to that nonconformity at this time. Separate from landscaping is Chapter 26 street trees. So final plan shall include street trees per the 40-foot spacing requirement, and existing trees may partially fulfill some of these requirements. Chapter 29 watershed health, no changes are proposed nor recommended at this time. And lastly, outdoor lighting, final plan shall include an outdoor lighting plan. What follows are findings of fact, conclusions of law, and conditions of approval. And then the recommendations are the conditions number 21 through 24 are those items that we talked about: lighting, street trees, not paving parking within the front yard setback, and then the bicycle parking. Thank you.
Thank you, Emily. Casey and Doug, do you have anything you'd like to supplement that staff report with? Questions or comments?
The only thing that I have, and I'm gonna get a quote on the end of shift facilities. Of whether or not that really is or should be required. No one's asking for it now, so and I was kind of looking at what it would cost to, roughly what it would cost to put that in, and so that's the only thing I'm working on right now, is the end of shift facilities. Not a big deal, but.
So I guess we formally request a waiver, but we haven't done the math if the 5%.
Right.
We don't know if it meets the 5%, so if there's no other means to get to a waiver other than that, we don't have that information tonight to know if we've met that criteria. I'm guessing not, but.
Okay. Noted. Discuss and deliberative. Emily, could you bring up a site plan for us and just quickly point out the current curb cuts, and maybe you guys could show us the outdoor storage, and sounds like there could be some trees going in that aren't there now that could help things. So let's just take a quick look at all that.
Yes, so the gray curb cut at the bottom of the page is the largest, widest curb cut. To the middle of the page in gray is a second curb cut. And then to the north, in this lighter hatching where you see the letters SCE, that is the informal gravel parking that is proposed to be paved.
And the outdoor storage, the non-conforming outdoor storage,
Yeah.
is sort of where you need to put stuff temporarily and moves around, or?
If you can zoom into the aerial photo, I don't know how clear or blurry it will be, but so there's existing truck parking. This is tractor trailer repair and sales. So currently, those vehicles are parked facing Avenue A to the south of the southerly drive. So right under the A in Avenue A is that line of vehicles that typically are parked within the 35-foot setback. So as staff said, those are approvable, they're basically grandfathered, but this plan will be updated to show that nonconformity, if you will, as an existing condition. Similarly, along that south line, I'm not sure if that might be the same situation there. Other than that, I think those are the only two spots where there's storage of vehicles within the setbacks.
Thank you. I mean, it doesn't look like there's any reasonable way to change any of that and still do business to me. We need
Those trucks take up a lot of room.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right. DRB, any questions for the applicant or staff?
None.
Okay.
Not at this time.
Okay. Anything from members of the public in person or online?
Jim, did you have a comment? No.
No, I was good.
Thanks, Jim. All right.
Just
Yeah,
a couple
go
more
ahead.
things, I guess, on the four conditions, the last four conditions. Outdoor lighting plan, we're fine with that. There's, I think, 3 or 4 existing lights along the perimeter of the buildings now. We do not show a new freestanding light in the area of the proposed office trailer or the existing parking. That's something we may consider. We just it never showed up on the plans and we haven't really decided yet. So I don't know if your conditions could, give the staff the authority to approve a freestanding light at final plans without having to come back to you. Similarly, we show that the gravel parking lot is to be paved for 7 spaces. As Emily pointed out, 2 of those spaces are in the 35-foot setback, so those will be removed from the plan. Paving isn't a sure thing now with the budget. We know we need to upgrade the gravel that's there with better gravel, or maybe ground asphalt or pavement, but again, that's an item that may change from what's on the plans now, and similarly to the light, we'd ask that you give the authority to make that decision to the staff, that if you folks were happy with either gravel or pavement, if you could live with either one, then staff could approve final plans when we decided at that point what the final surface would be. Street trees were fine. I think there's a whole line of existing street trees. We just have to add a few to the north end. And again, as Casey said, the end of trip facility would be something, it's not easily added to the existing building. Plumbing is below a slab. It means cutting a slab, exposing, tying into the underground sewer piping. There hasn't been a demand for it. Not a lot of these sales and mechanics bike to this facility. If there was a way to waive that requirement, that would be great. We looked at the office trailer itself. That's kind of a package deal. I think the submittal included a floor plan of that. There's 2 large ADA bathroom spaces, so because of that, there's not a lot of extra space for a shower within that office, unfortunately. So we'd just like some consideration on the end of trip facility. That's it.
That's all that.
Yep.
Deliberative? All right. Thank you both. One last chance for members of the public.
A reminder to folks online to press the raise hand button.
DRB, everyone's still good on this one?
Yep.
All right. We're going to close this hearing at 7:33 p.m. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Casey.
Next up is DP 26-08, Richard and Susan Brownell, discretionary permit request for a subdivision at 518 Lincoln Road in the ARRZD. Welcome.
Hi,
We'll open this up at 7:33, and if you could please state your name and address.
Rick Brownell. I reside at 518 Lincoln Road in Williston, adjoining and live on the parcel subject to the subdivision request before the board tonight.
And I'm still Doug Goulet, and I still live at 420 Southridge Road.
Perfect. All right. Thank you both. With that, we will turn this over to staff.
I do want to note that Sue Brownell is attending on Zoom.
Oh, thank you. All right.
Thanks, Emily. All right, this is a request for a 3-lot open space subdivision at 518 Lincoln Road in the ARZD. DRB previously saw this application at pre-app, and staff will go over some of the main changes that have occurred since then. It's a 26.7 acre parcel that will be divided into 1 existing dwelling lot, 1 new dwelling lot, and 1 open space lot. It's presently developed with a single-family home and a garage/ADU, currently served by off-site septic and an on-site drilled well. The new lot will be served by an on-site mound septic and new drilled well. So before we move on, just a couple things that we'll note: substantial projects changes since pre-application. You can see a little bit on this side-by-side here. In the pre-application, 2 lots were proposed side-by-side. And in the discretionary permit application, those 2 lots have been merged into 1. And that was done to resolve certain issues that were identified regarding to access primarily. is not able to be provided along the existing Class 4 road to the south. You'll also notice a quirk of the project, the existing lot has been shrunk in size, and that pertains to a little bit of math that staff identified. So what was identified as a single lot during the pre-application application is in fact 2 lots. And you'll see a fine diagonal line towards the top of the lot. If you're looking at the discretionary permit application, that's showing the boundary between those 2 lots. Now, there are 2 lots under the same ownership. The bylaw looks at those as a combined area with regards to the subdivision. However, staff looked at previous records and noted that the top 6.84 acres were used in a previous subdivision as part of a 75% set aside open space. So the only change with regards to that is that 6.84 acres can't be used again to count towards 75% open space. So we'll talk about that in addition, but that's what led to the reduction in the size of that existing lot. There's also been a designation of a replacement wastewater system in the new permit plans. Staff recommendation tonight is to take testimony, close, deliberate, and approve with conditions as drafted. The DRB and applicant will need to refer to Department of Public Works advice. There's a couple things to discuss with regards to driveway alignment and points of access that can likely be determined with final plans. This was subject to Conservation Commission review. Public Works submitted a memo that has been included on August 14th, and Fire submitted a memo that has been excluded. As previously stated, the Fire Department plan review standard is a select board policy, not an ordinance. It can only be enforced to the extent that it correlates with the standard of the duly adopted WDB. There were no public comment letters received. All right. There are a number of items that were recommendations from pre-app, and most of those have been addressed. The building envelopes were reduced to a half-acre clearing limit. The second lot was eliminated, and the applicant worked with Public Works to determine that it was not feasible, the previous proposal for access along the Class 4 part of Lincoln Road, which we have noted led to the consolidation of lots. Discretionary permit application was recommended to be in conformance with the number of bylaw standards that it wasn't previously identified to be. Access, compliance with the residential driveway standards, including alignment, grade, and site distance, and public works standards. We'll see a little bit more discussion on that to come. It's anticipated that this will be able to comply at final plans, but some amendments may be needed. On-site infrastructure, wastewater drill well specifications have all been provided and comply. Landscaping buffers are easy to comply with. The half-acre clearing lot that was shown on the discretionary permit application site plan does need to be amended slightly because it was shown going into that 50-foot buffer from the road slightly. So that does need to be amended, and that is noted here. And the Williston Conservation Commission reviewed this and provided a couple standard recommendations, mainly with regards to that buffer. All right, discretionary permit application must address comments in the Public Works memo that was provided on August 14th. And the Conservation Commission recommendations were all addressed in between pre-application and discretionary permit. A habitat disturbance assessment was conducted and prepared, delivered as a report on May 15th, 2026 by VHB. And that concurred with some preliminary habitat assessment work that was done by Bowman Consulting. An orchid assessment was done as was required and recommended by the state botanist because there are historic occurrences of orchids on site. That survey located no orchids, so there were no concerns, long-term concerns with uncommon, rare, threatened, or endangered species. So all those items were addressed as shown here. All right, so to look at some project elements in a little more detail. We've mentioned that the final plans will need to modify the building envelope that was shown slightly to not enter into the 50-foot buffer setback at all, and that should be easy to do. The application complies with density standards, and it complies with open space development standards. So there's an explanation in here of how the math broke down with regards to that element I talked about earlier. The 6.84 acres were taken out from the total acreage of the site, and so the 75% math was applied to 19.86 acres, which is what you have left, and the 3 lots on site were consolidated to 14.89 acres, which fits with the 75% open space rule. And the Conservation Commission determined at pre-application review and found with the current plan that the proposed configuration of open space minimizes the consumption of important conservation lands to the greatest extent that is possible and feasible for this site. It's a site that has a lot of steep slopes and wildlife habitat, and the applicant and the engineer did a good job of mitigating any impacts to those areas. All right. I'm going to jump down to kind of the next discussion of note. And this is really with regards to the driveway, the standards for access and grade and site distance and all of that with 13.2.3. So with alignment of the driveway, compliance is anticipated. The driveway apron extends into the road right-of-way, and so as was noted in the Department of Public Works comments, that's something that should be resolved at final plans. In general, what our bylaw says is that points of access should cross setbacks at 85 to 95 degrees, but it doesn't really clarify what happens at the corner of 2 setbacks. So in this case, the applicant has proposed a driveway that goes diagonally from the corner of a setback, and so there's some ambiguity there. But the DRB does have the power to grant an exception to these setback crossings for sites that have physical barriers like steep slopes and constraints on site. So that's something that can be done with this application and to help resolve the potential issue. Another potential resolution that could be applied to final plans would simply be to combine the access into a shared driveway with the existing driveway. In terms of grade, the Department of Public Works submitted comments that the applicant should discuss, and DRB should hear from the Department of Public Works. A special condition of approval may be necessary there. Staff will note that what follows in this section, these next 2 sentences, were actually left in from the pre-application staff report, so apologies. There's references to lot 1 and 2, and those were references from the pre-application report. Final plans should specify site distance calculations. So there's a couple of additional pieces of information that can be applied. And the access question also goes for the clearance standard with the bylaw that the DRB and the applicant should discuss. The access drives are far enough away from the existing intersection, but they're close to each other. So the DRB may permit that exception with the existing driveway and the proposed driveway very close to each other if it does not seem feasible to combine them into a shared driveway. So we can hear from the applicant and the engineer why that may not be feasible or not. A few other standards for the driveway that should be discussed. The narrative states the proposed driveway will be 10% grade, but should show a profile and specify the existing driveway's slope. If the existing driveway exceeds 10% grade, it should be noted on the final plans. That is, this is an existing driveway. In this case, again, because the constraints of the site, staff does not recommend requiring any grade modifications to that existing driveway. Any modifications would undoubtedly disturb more habitat than working with the existing driveway, even if it's over the 10%. In terms of construction, DRB and applicants should discuss that as well. Staff noted that it's unclear if the existing driveway meets the standard in the bylaw there. When an amendment or further development is proposed, the DRB may require that nonconformities be brought into compliance. So it's the same question here. So that's why the final plans need to include that driveway profile and cross-section. A few other items, final plans can include some additional detail. They should specify all underground utilities, including electrical and telecom. In terms of landscaping, Chapter 23, compliance is anticipated. We mentioned that 50-foot setback piece, that when the building envelope is corrected, it'll no longer be shown clearing into the 50-foot buffer, so that will comply. And that's an easy change. Street trees were not recommended or appropriate for this site. In terms of conservation areas, there are, as I noted, a lot of them on site. It's a great site for habitat, and correspondingly, there's a lot of mapped conservation areas that overlap with this site. But the applicant worked with the Conservation Commission, and the required assessments were done in terms of that habitat disturbance assessment, the orchid survey, given that there was mapped uncommon rare threatened species historic occurrences on site. So all that work was done, and there were no concerns that communicated through to this round from the Conservation Commission to the DRB. Runoff and erosion control plan was submitted. There were no Class 2 wetlands on site, so plans comply with watershed health components of the development review bylaw. And there are mapped primitive trails at the southern boundary of this parcel that was discussed at pre-application. Conservation Commission declined to recommend that any action was necessary to accommodate those because they run directly parallel to the Class 4 road that the town already has a right-of-way for. All right, what follows are findings of fact, conclusions of law, with noting that the DRB may permit an exception to the access grade and alignment standards here, depending on what is discussed tonight, and then recommended conditions of approval. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you, David. It sounds like you've put in a lot of work to get here tonight for sure. And David, your report detailed that very well. Some substantial changes from pre-app here. Looks like we have to talk about driveways a little bit, and of course anything else you'd like to touch on. So maybe if we could pull up the slide that shows driveways and talk to us a little bit about why a single driveway does or doesn't make sense, how you got to where you are now, and then fill us in on anything else you want.
Sure. So C202 is the plan sheet we'd like to look at. It zooms in on lot 1. If you recall at pre-app, we were here proposing, as David said, 2 lots with individual driveways off of the Class 4 section of Lincoln Hill Road, which in this view is basically right at the text of Lincoln Road is where the town stops maintaining it and where the classification changes. Public Works commented to say if we wanted to do that, we'd have to build a town road standard paved road for as far as we needed to go to get to that second driveway, which was a project killer basically, at least for 2 lots. So we abandoned that and went with a single lot, as you're seeing here now. I'm going to have you zoom in a little bit more, whoever's driving, please. So we have a single lot, and this shaded section that you see up at the top is the existing driveway to Rick and Sue's house. It's paved, and just about immediately after turning right off of Lincoln Hill Road and starting up that hill, it's 14% grade. It's paved. It's paved probably because it's 14%. So one option would have been to, have the lot 1 driveway come off that at some point up that steep driveway. We decided not to burden their driveway with another driveway and at that slope. And we couldn't come off of the Class 4 section of road, so that leaves us with really one location as shown there. We show proposed contours, the first 50 feet of that driveway is 4%. There are discrepancies in the development standards and the public works specs. The public works specs, typical driveway profile allows 15% slopes. So we're way under that, and the existing driveway is under that. So the 10% is not a real number, or at least it's contrary to what the public works details show. So anyway, we're at 4%, and then we increased to 10% up to the house. This isn't a site plan review. I mean, as you know, it's a rural subdivision. Whoever buys this lot will not build it per this plan, probably. They'll have a different house location. They may have a different driveway. They could be closer to the southern property line. They could move down the hill slightly if they can get 15% slopes or less per the public works specs. So I guess in summary, this plan depicts a plan that works. We're not at the 3%, but we're at 4%, which is still a very modest slope coming off Lincoln Road. There's really no other, I mean, to make it flatter would just be more earthworks to cut into that slope. So we're trying to balance that with tree disturbance and cuts and fills. So I think this is a good balance. Other than that, you know, the width meets the regulations. So we would ask that we not have to do a profile of this driveway, just because whoever builds will probably not, like I said, build this. So it would be sort of an exercise in futility to draw a profile for a driveway that may or may not look like this. We're showing, and there's notes on the plans that say we're showing that a driveway can be built to meet the town standards to the greatest extent. If 3% is our standard for the first 50 feet in one location, in the DPW it's 12 feet. So again, there's a lot of numbers, but it's a safe driveway. So we think it's a good layout, and there really aren't any options for the driveway on this site. We're coming in, you know, right kind of parallel to the contours. Even if we were to move, if we could come off of Lincoln Road further down, if you will, we then have to go perpendicular up an embankment. So again, this is the best spot for a driveway. If you visit the site, you would agree in about 5 minutes that this is where the driveway should be for this lot. Other than that, we're good with everything else.
Thanks, Doug.
Yep.
DRB, any questions for the applicants?
Nope.
Are there any members of the public that have questions or comments on this hearing? Before we close this, I just want to confirm the 10% versus 15% with staff. Is 10% a DPW number and 15% is the bylaws? Where's the discrepancy exactly?
The bylaw is 10%.
Bylaw is 10%.
And then there's that different standard for the first 50 feet of the driveway, the bylaw, and I believe also Public Works say 3%. And Christine, the Public Works Director, is attending online and has her hand raised.
Great. Yeah, Christine, if you'd like to comment on that, it would be helpful.
Hi, DRB members. Sorry I couldn't be there in person today. For the record, Christine Doherty, Public Works Director. The reason why this secondary submittal of the access, the driveway access here was flagged is because of the angle in which it's coming off the public right-of-way. I understand, you know, some of the conversation that's been having historically around this section of road being, you know, essentially class 4. But we still can't burden a right-of-way. We don't know what the future plans are. We have to keep our right-of-ways open and unencumbered. When you look at the layout and the approach that this driveway has, it not only crosses over, the neighboring parcel, but it is coming at such an angle. If we were to actually develop that right-of-way, That's not a very safe access point. And I understand that in today's environment and on the ground today, it may look like this is a reasonable approach to how to develop this parcel and how to provide access to it. But we have to look at a lens that looks at the future and leaves the future open with the possibility of smart infill and development. And an access like this is not supportive of that. That is why Department of Public Works flagged this. The angle that it's coming at, it should be closer to a 90. We discussed an opportunity to provide that. The applicant understood the cost implications of that. That's our standards. We don't have standards for, for gravel roads. If there's an opportunity to come off the existing driveway, that may be a better option. But from Department of Public Works perspective, the angle in which this is coming off of right-of-way, if there was ever to be a future development and that road was to ever get constructed and brought up to a Class 3, it's just not functional. That's all I had to share. Thank you. Happy to take any questions.
Yeah, that is helpful. And Doug, I'd like to turn this back to you guys at this point for comments around that.
So, I mean, one point of clarity in the staff report, section 1326, standards for driveways that serve more than one dwelling, that's not what we're proposing. We're not proposing that a shared driveway, lot one will have its own driveway. So in our view, my view, 13.2.6 doesn't apply to this. This driveway does not serve more than one dwelling. So that puts us to up to our specs, 15%. 3%, 4%, well, we're asking for deference, as the condition says, to give us a little bit of a break here. We can't lose another lot. This subdivision goes away because of, a 1% difference in a gravel driveway coming off a gravel road. The town uses Rick's driveway as a turnaround with no legal access. To Christine's point, sure, if 30 years from now they decide to do something on Lincoln Road and this driveway is a little bit of a problem, they would realign it at that point. Turn it a little bit, I don't know what, but we respectfully disagree with Public Works that this is at the end of a gravel road in the middle of the woods, that somehow this is not appropriate alignment for this driveway.
Oh, thank you, Doug. And yeah, I think we do have what we need to know to go into a deliberative session, but I just want to ask the DRB one more time. Are there any questions that spark anyone here regarding any of what you just heard?
No.
Okay, thank you. And is there anything else from the applicant? And I'll put it out one last time, or sorry, go ahead, Emily.
Yeah, one more comment from staff. So in terms of the standards of 1326, there was a recent bylaw amendment, and staff may have, we try to communicate bylaw amendments to ongoing applications. This one might have fallen through the cracks. So the standards of 1326 now apply to driveways that serve one or more primary dwellings. So the 10% grade, construction standards, etc. of 1326 now apply to driveways just serving one dwelling.
Okay.
Was this the amendment?
That, it was formally approved by the select board on July 21st. They warned a public hearing back in like April or May. So the bylaw amendment went into effect functionally before you guys filed a discretionary permit, because when the select board warns a hearing, both the existing and proposed bylaw standards are applicable. At the end of the day, I think this is something that is fairly minor and can be resolved in the filing of final plans with a consultation with the Public Works Department.
Okay, thanks for pointing that out, Emily.
Yeah, we were definitely aware of that.
going to open this up to any last comments from members of the public, applicant, DRB, DPW. All right, with that, we will close this hearing at 8 p.m. Thank you both. Thank you. Next up will be DP 24-06.1 River's Edge Development, Windswept Meadows at Trails Bend Drive in the residential zoning district. Welcome, Brian. You could state your name for the official record and all that business, please.
Brian Courier, Larry Burke Civil Associates, 13 Corporate Drive, Essex, representing Building Edge Building Development.
Thank you, Brian. Staff goes next.
Thanks, Nate. This is a request to make modifications to the Windswept Meadows subdivision. The proposal is one, to eliminate a lot, reducing the overall unit count from 107 to 106 dwellings. 2, modify the parcel boundaries for lots 25 through 28. And 3, modify the neighborhood amenities by replacing the 1,200 square foot community building with a playground and pavilion. This development is the result of the Glazer specific plan and subject to customized bylaw standards in WDB chapters 11 and 38 as discussed above. The overall acreage of the development area and its private open space is 44 acres. This application was not subject to design or conservation commission review. Staff recommendation is to take testimony, close the hearing, deliberate, and approve with recommendations, with conditions as drafted. The DRB must review the growth management scoring and conclusion of law number 3. This is the first time the DRB is reviewing this request. This subdivision and the Glazer specific plan has a lengthy history that's not all summarized here, but the most recent high points include the discretionary permit approval in April 2025, final plans approval in February 2026, and also in February 2026, the first permit to begin infrastructure construction. The Public Works Department had comment. Their comment memo is included as a condition of approval. The Fire Department did not have any comments. No public comment letters were received at the time of mailout nor up until this evening. In terms of the standards of the residential zoning district, this complies with the 25-foot front yard setback and other dimensional requirements. It complies with the open space development standards. Nothing major is happening here. Those lots are getting slightly deeper, but they do not encroach into the abutting wetland buffer. And it complies with the pedestrian-friendly development standard. Their proposed community amenity still has a sidewalk connecting to the street side sidewalk. Subdivision and final plans. Compliance is anticipated here. The final plans will need to number the units chronologically 1 through 106. There was a proposal to skip lucky or unlucky number 13, depending on how you look at that number. And I think just for simplicity, not looking for, the pig with number 13 running around throughout this project's permit cycle, it makes sense to just keep everything chronological. The way the lots are being, that one lot is being eliminated is the surrounding lots are getting slightly larger in acreage. So that back end of Trails End Drive that has all the single family lots will go from 10 down to 9. Watershed Health complies as proposed. The final plans already depict boulders in compliance. And the other thing on section 12 about subdivision and final plans is that we're asking at final plans for a complete revised plan set. So all pages for the development to reflect those lot readjustments, the unit count. That way in the future, if there's any question, and every time a question about, utilities, driveway profile, erosion and runoff control. All of the corresponding plan sets are one unified document that correspond to what's happening on the site, and that avoids confusion in the future, especially when things are being closed out at certificate of occupancy phase. So yeah, jumping to chapter 29, there's boulders on the plans that complies as proposed to adjust those lot depths. Final plans must still include an outdoor lighting plan for the parking lot and pavilion. And the main topic of discussion this evening is chapter 11, affordable homes and growth management. So the Glazer specific plan development is required to maintain a 50-point growth management score. And the findings of fact from the original discretionary permit are excerpted in the left-hand column in the table below. The DRB must decide if the modified park amenities uphold the score. So in this instance, the project scored 5 out of 10 points in the category of provide neighborhood space. This is the applicable criterion that we're looking at this evening. And there were 3 areas proposed and shown on the final plan. So there's community gardens near Glazer Court. Glazer Court is the cul-de-sac up off of Mountain View Road. Those community garden amenities are not being changed. There's natural play and seating elements along the cross-country multi-use path. Those elements are not being changed. The only of the 3 elements that are being changed is the community building, going from a 1,200 square foot structure to a 750 square foot pavilion with a playground and wetland and benches that overlook the wetlands park to the north. Staff notes that the original final plans depict water and sewer lines connecting to the community building, and at minimum, staff recommends bringing a water line to the pavilion with an outdoor water fountain or a garden spigot. So the DRB must discuss if these changes of amenities, and only one of the 3 amenities are changing, is upholding the 5 out of 10 point score. There is another category, sustainable transportation, with the bicycle storage lockers and carpool spaces. Those are still being proposed as part of this neighborhood space area. What follows is a comparison. On the top of the page is the pavilion with picnic tables and the playground, and then the bottom is what was shown on final plan. So the parking lot is staying in the same place, and the building footprint is being repurposed. What follows are findings of fact that excerpt the growth management score and Glazer specific plan requirements, conclusions of law, number 3 for the DRB to review, and then the conditions of approval. Noting at the end how final plans should be numbered and superseded, and then the water service for the pavilion. Thank you.
Thank you, Emily. Brian, what's driving the change on the amenities from the building to how do we get here?
So what's driving the change is we didn't feel the community building would be used terribly frequently with the residents. So it was only 1,200 square feet. There weren't any requirements about, what amenities were going to be, served or utilized within the community building. Every unit has 1,200 square feet of finished space, but it is a pretty tight development. So there's, we would say there's probably lacking outdoor space, for activities. So part of the amendment is not just the structure change, but in addition, we're going to extend a 6-foot-high rock wall about double the length in order to flatten out that area, create more usable space, fence it in like a playground, well, like a typical playground you might see, then the playground pavilion, and then given it's an elevated position that overlooks the wetland area and the parking lot's already been built, we thought it'd be a really nice place to put a few benches to overlook kind of that, that big class 2 wetland that separates the 2 clusters of development. So I would say our primary drivers, we feel that use would better serve the residents of this development rather than a kind of a unspecific 1,200 square foot, community building for, who knows?
And the bicycle storage is under this pavilion?
That's correct.
And is it long-term bicycle? Is this just a rack? Or is it...
Yeah, so the requirement is it's got to be secure and covered, I believe. So we felt that, securing kind of an interior space within the pavilion. Obviously, you will have open walls on all four sides except for the corner where the bikes are stored. I envision some, maybe wall-mounted brackets being installed somewhere we can fit, 10 bicycle spaces easily. It obviously, in order for it to be secure, would have to be have some type of door or locking mechanism to the racks.
So, question for staff, secure can't just be a lockable rack, it has to be an enclosed.
Yeah, so that's why there's that enclosure required.
So we have to ask you to put a chicken coop under your pavilion.
Yeah, well, what exactly the materials would be, we haven't worked out yet,
Okay.
but the idea is it would be within the footprint of the pavilion.
Got it. And how do you feel about water service that staff recommended?
If that's something the DRB feels is necessary, we already have our water service stubbed out there, so it's not a huge lift. We do have 2 water spigots already for the community gardens. They come with meter pits, but I think our preference would be a yard hydrant over an exterior, an outdoor fountain. But, if the board feels it's necessary, then we would do it.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you'd like to add to the staff report or questions?
Nope.
DRB? Anybody?
Nothing.
Okay. Members of the public, in person or online? Staff?
Are these homes, do they have garages?
Sorry, if you, I have to ask you to come up and state your name right here. We're very official. Just go ahead, have a seat here, and if you could please state your name and address.
It's Sharon Arnold, and my address?
Yep,
It's Metcalf Drive on Southridge.
okay, thank you, Sherry.
So I'm curious to know, I haven't seen the proposal, are the homes with garages? Do they have garages?
And so, questions should be directed to the board, but it's okay.
Sorry.
Brian, if you want to go ahead and answer that, it's no problem.
Yes, they do.
Oh, and space enough to put bikes in? Are these just bikes so they ride over and use the place, that area, and then they ride home and walk their bikes up home?
I think the idea here is that there's a supplemental area at the community space that could be utilized for short or long term. It's probably realistically going to be more short term, I would think, but Brian, I'll let you comment on that.
Yeah, I would say this development's a little uniquely positioned where it is functionally 2 separate kind of clusters connected by what will be a town recreation path that's roughly 1,000 feet long. So I would envision people maybe from the Glazer Court side biking over to use this facility and going back, but I can't envision it as long-term storage with people's garages and homes right there, but never know.
Well, that's what I'm wondering, is it only going to be space enough for 10 bikes if it's long-term? Maybe that's really not enough space.
Yeah, so the amount of spaces and the long-term spaces are part of the old growth management process that this development was originally under. So that was an amenity. Is it still part of the scoring process now?
Yep, so it's criterion 8, sustainable transportation. Developments that will support transportation sustainability by providing publicly accessible facilities that allow for transit use, carpooling, electric vehicle charging, car sharing, or secure covered bicycle storage will receive 1 to 10 points for those provisions. So that 1 to 10 points depend on what and how many of those 5 listed amenities. And this development chose to do the covered bicycle storage and the carpooling spaces. And these are amenities that are publicly accessible. So if you have, an employee working in the neighborhood or in the area, or someone who's a bike commuter, and it works for them to commute there and then carpool with a friend, that they have a space that's not using someone's private garage to facilitate sustainable transportation options. When this standard was written, the intent of the Planning Commission and the Energy Committee was to eventually, through all of these developments, have a network of places for carpooling, car share, EV charging, just to build out the network in Williston of alternative modes of transportation.
So the number of spaces here as proposed tonight are essentially the same as your original proposal?
Yes,
It's
and the
a
number of
calculated
spaces-
number based on the units, yeah.
Yep, so it's one carpool or EV charging space per 25 dwellings, or two secure bicycle parkings per 25 dwellings. So it is a calculation based on the overall unit count. That's
So-
how we landed with 10.
So the goal of this is to make something functional and beneficial for the community, but we are somewhat limited based on bylaws that are in place. And so my question for Emily and for staff is, what wiggle room, if any, does the board have if an applicant, if Brian wanted to change something here in terms of bicycle storage, make more or less? I mean, you're limited by the space that's there, essentially,
Yep.
is the main limiting factor, is the actual space. But if for some reason the board thought no playground and all bicycle storage was better, do we even have, clearly that's not gonna be better, but do we even have the authority to do that?
I'm not quite sure offhand, but I do want to note that the original final plans showed this bicycle storage in conjunction with the community building. So they're just maintaining that existing amenity, and now it's within the pavilion. If they wanted to propose something different, they could.
Do the bicycle storage spaces live within the transportation section too, right? And we're
Yeah.
not asking for any revisions, changes, modifications to that section?
Correct.
Just the
yeah.
neighborhood growth management section.
Yep, so
So-
when I jump back up to that.
I guess to answer your question,
Yeah.
tonight, probably not.
Yeah. So there are 9 criterion in this, and I might have said 8 incorrectly a moment ago. Conserve energy, they didn't get any points there originally, so that's not applicable. Build affordable housing, they're still doing their required 10% category 2. Offer housing choices, there's still a mix of single, triplex, duplex units, so they're still offering a mix of housing. Provide number space, category 4, that's what's under discussion about the community building becoming a pavilion and playground. Build paths and trails, they got full points there for doing the path along Mountain View Road and connecting the 2 neighborhoods. They're not changing that. As well as design for context, build close to services, and neighborhood design. Those categories are not changing. And lastly is sustainable transportation, where they got 6 out of 10 points, and they're continuing to maintain those points by providing the same amenities of the bicycle storage and carpool spaces.
Thanks, Emily. Yeah, and I think it's a great question.
Yeah.
The goal is always to make something functional and beneficial. At this point in the process, as an amendment to an existing discretionary permit, we don't have a lot of space to change things.
So my other question is this, is the playground gonna be large enough? Because if you've got 106 homes, I'm looking at probably a lot of young families moving in possibly, right? So is that playground gonna be large enough for, a lot of kids to have fun and run around and play? Are they gonna have pickleballs or tennis or anything like that there, or no?
Well, this is, as proposed, it is a playground. Originally, it was only a building. And part of this proposed amendment is, as Brian spoke briefly about, building a retaining wall that will actually increase the amount of usable green space there, is my understanding. But Brian, please go
Yeah.
ahead and elaborate.
Yeah, the increasing the length of the stone wall, basically, it's about a 6-foot high wall that's meant to flatten out the area. Basically doubles the amount of usable space that's there.
With fencing around it?
Right now, there's no proposed fencing. It's just a 1,200 square foot building with no specific use, interior floor plans, mechanicals, nothing along those lines.
But you could take out another house, right? Could you take out or remove another house?
We are
I'm just
proposing to
wondering,
remove a
because
single family
I
home.
have Northridge right behind us, which we have all these houses that I think a couple of them should not have been, and, proposed there. So you've got these houses with kids that, the same thing, they've kind of built a wall, and their backyards are like almost spilling over the bike path. And I'm waiting for somebody to put fencing up, because it just seems a little bit unsafe.
That is good feedback. I don't,
Yeah,
At
I'm
this-
just
yeah.
spitting.
no, they're very good questions and comments. We're at a point in this particular permit process where we're looking at an amendment to one small piece of this, And they have proposed eliminating a house to create more space.
Right.
So your thought process is right on, really, with what they're doing. The DRB, you know, we don't have we have a proposal that comes to us. Happens to be an amendment. Brian, is there anything else you'd like to say?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say, you know, this isn't our only growth management piece, right? We have 4,000 square feet of rec path. We got a ton of points and other benefits for donating, you know, 15 acres along Mountain View Road that are appraised at over $1 million. So this project has already made substantial contributions toward recreation to the town. We're the walkable, even though we don't get any design for context points, we are certainly a walkable neighborhood to, you know, the Williston rec fields that are just to the south off Old Stage Road here. So it's not the only place. There are other amenities along some of our rec paths, specifically the Cross Country One, community gardens. So this isn't our only recreational opportunity.
The community gardens are unchanged and.
Yep, those are unchanged. All the features along kind of that unique rec path. We actually did have pickleball courts there at one time, but the environmental folks didn't want to have the noise there, so we had to remove them. But yeah, there's a lot going on around us and in the development.
Sure. Thank you very much, Sharon. Appreciate it. Are there any other members of the public in person or online that would like to ask a question? DRB, we good? Good. Brian? Staff? Mm-hmm. All right, with that, we'll close this hearing at 8:21 p.m. Thank you. Brian. Our last hearing of the evening will be DP 27-03, the Developmental Disabilities Housing Initiative at 12 Southridge Road in the Village Zoning District. Welcome. If you could both please state your names and your addresses.
Yes.
To be official.
Yep. Chris Snyder with Snyder Homes, 4076 Shelburne Road, Shelburne, Vermont.
Andy Rowe, Snyder Homes, same address.
Thank you. Staff goes next.
Thanks, Nate. This is a request for pre-application review of a 9-dwelling unit building to be located at 12 Southridge Road in the Village Zoning District. The application also includes a proposal for a 3-lot subdivision. So the parcel is just under 6 acres at 5.91 acres. Lot 1 is what's proposed to have the 9-dwelling unit building. It will be 1 acre. Lot 2 will be vacant, intended for further development in the future, unspecified at this time. That Lot 2 will be 1.2 acres, and Lot 3 will be watershed buffer open space, about 3.7 acres. The property is currently vacant. It has access on Williston Road, a state highway, and Southridge Road, a public right-of-way. It was subject to both design review and Conservation Commission review. Staff's recommendation is to take testimony and close the hearing, deliberate, and approve the list of recommendations as drafted. This is the first time the DRB is reviewing the request. Staff notes that this homestead parcel is left over from the Southridge subdivision. It was the Goodrich homestead, and those structures were demolished around 2010. Conservation Commission and Historic and Design Advisory Committee comments are included. The Public Works Department comments are included, and the Fire Department comments are included with limitations, noting that the Fire Department Plan Review Standard is a Select Board policy, not an ordinance, and therefore can only be enforced to the extent that it correlates with the requirement of the duly adopted bylaw. The applicant is encouraged to communicate with the Fire Department regarding their recommendations and potential action taken by the Fire Department if their recommendations are not followed. The Police Department did not respond to the request for comment. One comment letter was received at the time of mail-out, submitted by Jen Townley on behalf of several families. No other comment letters or emails were received up until this evening. Project elements in terms of the Village Zoning District, there's several design and development standards here, where compliance is anticipated with the setbacks, how far a primary structure is set back from the road. Compliance is also anticipated with side and rear yard setbacks, both for the structures and the parking lot, because the parking lot will be serving more than 5 dwellings. Dimensional standards, compliance is also anticipated with building height. I do want to highlight here that in the village zoning district, it's calculated from existing grade, not finished grade, and that's 36 feet of maximum height. Compliance is also anticipated with the primary building mass standard, so the main block of the building closest to Southridge and Williston Road. It meets the maximum limit of 2,000 square feet, and the overall building footprint is limited to 6,000 square feet. Compliance is also anticipated with the building frontage length, so the front facade adjacent to the public road appears to be able to meet the maximum 50-foot length. And staff notes that this calculation is based on a single plane, not counting facades of the two masses together. So when you look at the footprint of the building, there are some jog lines, and we consider one plane to be a facade. Compliance is anticipated with the telescoping development pattern of the village zoning district. So this is a series of attached or detached structures that are oriented in a telescoping pattern away from adjoining public roads. While it makes sense up in the core of the village zoning district where we're located for buildings to be oriented towards Williston Road, in this location, it makes sense for the building to be oriented towards Southridge Road. It's a quieter street, and it provides that gateway function into the Southridge neighborhood. The bylaw doesn't have a strict requirement one way or another, just that pick one. So in this instance, the primary facade faces Southridge Road, and then the building addition telescopes away. So it's still parallel to Williston Road, but it meets the standard of this bylaw. The Historic and Design Advisory Committee provided comment about windows and doors, roof design, material transitions, and massing to scale. Primarily that a discretionary permit, things like architectural elevations and calculations, renderings, and material information must demonstrate compliance. What I mean by calculation is window proportion, roof pitch, how far an eave sticks out from the side of the building, siding reveal, those dimensional standards that contribute to the massing scale and architectural proportionality of the structure. Section 9 of Chapter 41 for general site and parking lot design. Compliance is also anticipated here. Side yard parking is permissible, and this side yard parking is permissible if it meets that minimum 20-foot setback from the structure's primary facade. Private open area. So the DRB should discuss if a privacy fence should be required along the private open area's frontage along Williston Road. If required, the DRB should discuss if full length is necessary or if partial screening is sufficient. So putting a fence the entire length of that private open area would be significant. It would be over 500 feet of fence. Partial screening would provide for some buffering and privacy in a more manageable, maintainable length of fence. That private area is shown to the east of the building, and while it complies with the location standards, given the topography of the hillside coming down Williston Road, fencing in a component of it would provide some private, semi-private outdoor space per the intent of 4195. Exterior colors and prohibited materials. So color is not regulated in this zoning district, but guidelines are provided for appropriate material and color transitions. And materials must not propose anything from the prohibited materials list. So in this district, there's a short list of no-no materials. There is flexibility for things like cementitious siding, vinyl siding, composite windows. The intent is that those material standards be provided at discretionary permit to determine that they are substantial and meeting the design intent of the village zoning district. Section 12 for screening and landscape buffers. So subdivisions with platted lots in the village zoning district are required to provide a type 3 informal plantings buffer for at least 50% of the proposed side and rear parcel boundaries. So traditionally, the landscape standards of Chapter 23 apply to the exterior boundaries of the parent parcel. The village adds to that standard by saying, do your landscaping on the exterior as well as the interior parcel lines that you're drawing. And we'll get into that further in Chapter 23. Street trees, there is a 50-foot greenbelt requirement. And there appears to be one tree within that area that may be impacted. See also Chapter 26 about street trees. It appears from imagery that that tree has dying canopy and appears to be in poor health. The intention of this standard is if there are existing street trees or greenbelt trees that are going to be removed or are going to die over the next couple of years simply due to their age and condition, that there be a plan for their replacement on the planting schedule. There's also a front yard landscaping standard in the village zoning district. It's a calculated area based on 50% of the structure's length and 30% of the depth. Basically, it's small shrubs and annual or perennial flower plantings to soften the front yard appearance. Typically, front yard fences are limited to 48 inches in height and must be 40% open. The fence along the private area should not be considered a front yard fence, and thereby being able to be taller, like a 6-foot fence that's typical for a side or rear yard to provide a screening function. Mechanical, so there are standards in the village zoning district very specific to placement and screening of mechanical equipment, and the discretionary permit will need to include a mechanical and utility plan. I highlight some of those special requirements, things about if you're going to put a little sloped roof over a heat pump, that it match the style and blend into the side of the home, that kind of thing. Enforcement and guarantees, so there must be draft documents, covenants, bylaws, articles of incorporation to demonstrate how required private improvements will be maintained. Chapter 11, growth management. This project proposes 9 units and has 2 pathways forward. The applicant has expressed their intent to move forward as inclusionary zoning. The bylaw requirement is that 1 unit be deeded perpetually affordable at 100% area median income. They expressed an intent for all 9 units to meet that standard. Option 2 would be to move forward as a market rate project. That would mean proceeding to growth management review in March 2027 before filing a discretionary permit. Subdivision and final plans. So I do want to note that the overall parcel is actually 22 listed acres, but for the purposes of zoning, it is considered a split parcel, 2 parcels, because of Southridge Road. So the rest of the acreage is on the west side of Southridge Road, continuing along that Allen Brook buffer. So that's why tonight the board is not looking at 22 acres, you're looking at 5.91. Access compliance is anticipated. So lot 1 is proposed to use the existing curb cut onto Southridge Road, and future lot 2 would be served by an existing curb cut onto Williston Road. Staff does not recommend a traffic study. Pre-app is the time for the DRB to request a traffic study. The Public Works Department is advisory to the DRB on this topic, and the comment memo from Public Works did not request a traffic study. The traffic generation from 9 units is expected to be significantly low and accommodated by existing known data about the Southridge Road and Williston Road corridors. Off-street parking and loading. Here, the DRB may allow or require the minimum number of spaces necessary for the use. So this standard gives the DRB a lot of authority to work with the applicant on an appropriate parking count. The typical parking rate for a multifamily building within the sewer service area is 1.5 spaces per dwelling. So based on that calculation, 13.5 spaces is one number of what could be feasible. The applicant is proposing 10 spaces. They're also proposing more ADA spaces than what our bylaw requires. All of this is compliant with the standards of the village zoning district, and aligns with their intended occupancy structure. Outdoor bicycle parking is to be determined at discretionary permit, and end-of-trip facilities are not required for residential uses. On-site infrastructure, so compliance is anticipated. Sidewalks or multi-use paths are typically required along all existing and proposed road frontages. So here the applicant is proposing to construct the sidewalk along the Southridge road frontage, and staff is recommending that a multi-use path easement not constructed be provided along the Williston road frontage of lot 22. The reason staff does not recommend that multi-use path construction along Williston Road is the scale of development being proposed, 9 units in a single building. There's no development known for lot 2. And then separately from the development review process, the Planning Commission and Select Board are undergoing scoping study and feasibility work on a Village to Taft Corners bike path project that might construct that entire segment, and it's to be determined if the path would be on the north or south side. So getting the easement from the applicant provides that placeholder without having them do work that goes above and beyond the proportionality of the scale of this development. Private utilities, the discretionary permit must show that all provided utilities will be underground. This property will be served by municipal water and sewer. Maintenance, particularly showing snow storage at discretionary permit and solid waste. Here the village zoning district has a specific threshold. So if trash is expected to be accommodated by 4 or fewer 95-gallon totes, those are the typical rolling trash bins that you roll down your driveway. Those are fine, located to the side or rear. If you're expecting to have more than 4 of those rolly bins, then things need to be consolidated to a dumpster area, and that's when the thresholds for fencing and landscape screening come into play. Density. So here is where we talk about open space development. Smaller parcels in the village zoning district can be developed with the open space pattern, but where proposed, it must be recommended by the DRB during pre-application. And we have that set up in the pre-app recommendations listed below. So during the discussions at the Historic and Design Advisory Committee about the private open area calculation, it became apparent that the open space subdivision pattern would assist with the private open area calculation, as well as protecting watershed protection buffers. So earlier in chapter 41, we talked about that required private open area. That's based on 15% of the gross parcel area, and it is more feasible to provide a functional private open area on 1 acre of land versus the whole 5.91, when a vast majority of that 5.91, almost 4 acres, is within the buffer to the Allen Brook, where no development or residential activity should be taking place. And this complies with the density in the village zoning district. So parcels less than 2 acres, density is not expressed as unit per acre. This is above 2 acres, so the density is 5 dwellings per acre. The theoretical maximum would be 30 dwellings. They're proposing 9. That leaves a little bit of wiggle room should any development be proposed on lot 2 in the future. Landscaping. So in terms of those landscape buffers and where they dovetail with the village zoning district, to the north, that open space lot fulfills that 50-foot existing vegetation buffer. To the east, the church is considered a retail service commercial use, and then a landscape buffer would apply to that eastern boundary of lot 2. The west and south are public ways, so those front yard landscaping and street tree standards apply. And then it's chapter 4112 that talks about providing a type 3 buffer on the line that's shared between proposed lots 1 and 2. The Conservation Commission reviewed this application on August 19th. The property is mapped with significant wildlife habitat areas, and a habitat disturbance assessment is required. The property is mapped with scenic viewshed areas. However, the village zoning district doesn't have scenic viewshed open space standards, like the comparable standards in the residential zoning district or the agricultural rural zoning district. In fact, the village zoning district standards expect development within full view of public roads, setting minimum and maximum setbacks for structures, the telescoping building pattern. So this is an interesting case where Chapter 19 says that open space development can be permitted in the village zoning district, and that primary intent is for protecting the watershed buffer areas. We're not in a zoning district like residential or ag rural, where there's additional protections for scenic viewshed. Special flood hazard areas, there are some flooding zones on this parcel, and they coincide with the Allen Brook buffer, so compliance is anticipated there. Watershed health, providing a wetlands delineation at discretionary permit, as well as a professionally prepared runoff and erosion control plan for how site work will be kept clean and keep our waterways clean during construction. Outdoor lighting compliance is anticipated. I do note that the village zoning district has some more restrictive lighting standards than other places in town. So the mounting height is limited to 15 feet above finished grade, where other places it's 25 feet. Facade lighting is only permitted where adjacent to an entryway, and this would include the wraparound porch. So on the north side of the building, there's a ramp from the driveway to provide ADA access to the front porch. So that whole front porch area would be viewed as part of the primary entryway for the building. Parking lot lighting is also limited to pedestrian bollards as opposed to tall pole-mounted fixtures. Lastly, impact fees. These are assessed on a per unit basis at the time of administrative permit. There's an automatic fee reduction for units that are affordable for the transportation impact fee. The Parks and Recreation impact fee is only partially or totally discounted by the select board upon request, and there would need to be certain criteria met. In this case, that the developer is a community land trust, housing trust, or other nonprofit, such as Champlain Housing Trust, that's a part of this application. I do know that the affordable dwellings would need to be affordable at or below 80% AMI. The applicant's narrative intended an intent for 100% AMI. So what follows are a list of recommendations. 1C for the board to consider about the private open area fence, and then the specific documentation that needs to be provided at discretionary permit, including the Conservation Commission and Historic and Design Advisory comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Emily. Chris and Andy, I think probably the biggest thing to talk about now is just, in a perfect world, do you want a fence along Williston Road? Do you know at this point?
I don't think we want a requirement for a fence.
You like options, not requirements.
Always.
Yes.
Honest answer.
As Emily noted, as you come down the hill from the village toward Taft Corners, you've got a pretty good view of that area. A fence, I guess I'm also not sure, would it be limited to 48 inches, or would it be eligible for a higher height? Sort of in one respect, this is considered a front yard in terms of landscaping, but it may not be in terms of the fence.
Sounds like along Williston Road, we have the ability to allow it to be taller than 48 inches.
Yeah, so the staff recommendation was if the fence is to be set back a little bit, not right up on the front yard, it could be treated more like a side yard fence, and it serves the intent of providing that screening buffer. Because the private open area can be located to the side or rear of the primary structure, I would say as long as that fence is in line or behind that facade that's closest to the street, it would be considered to the side, and then could be that taller privacy screening requirement, as opposed to that 48 inch is more intended for something, the white picket fence that's right up along public right of way.
So I think we'd prefer not to have the requirement. You know, there's a number of standards in terms of architectural requirements to work through in the village zoning district. You know, we've got to work through the private open space as well, and we wouldn't want the fence to be competing with the architecture of the building. But if there's a need, we can kind of work through that as we're preparing our discretionary permit application.
Okay. Are there any other things that you would like to bring up, questions or comments to supplement the staff report?
We certainly are in favor of the open space development. You know, as Emily said, it allows for the land along the brook to be set aside and also allows for a more reasonable private open space calculation based upon the lot area that's being developed. In terms of open space, in terms of the landscape buffer, the easterly buffer on lot 2, the boundary line up against the church. You know, not knowing what's going to happen on lot 2 at this point, we'd like the flexibility to identify, you know, whether that's a type 1, type 2, type 3, or type 4 landscape buffer in the future. You know, based upon what's happening there, the width is a variable as well as what type of plantings are included in there. You know, if we had to default to something at this point, it would probably be the 50-foot type 1. But again, not knowing if we can defer that until development on lot 2, we understand that the landscape buffer between lot 1 and lot 2 would need to be addressed with the discretionary permit application for the development on lot 1. But if we can wait to see what happens on lot 2 for that easterly boundary in common with the church property, we'd appreciate that.
Okay. Becky, go ahead.
Now, just a quick little overview. So this is a piece of property that was I call it a remnant piece of the Southridge neighborhood, and it was the Goodrich homestead for a long time. And we've owned this, and we've tried probably off and on for 10 or 12 years to come up with some different ideas of what could happen on this property. And about a year ago, we started communicating with DDHI, and I know there are some members of that group here tonight. And then they also participated with Champlain Housing Trust. And we're very excited about supporting this group and providing this land. And we are going to be donating land to support the services and the housing that they're going to be providing on the property. And it should be noted that the access is already there. The curb cut is already on Southridge Road. So there's no new entrances created. And the plan would be for the access to lot 2. There may need to be a slight adjustment to a driveway if it needed, but you could access that second lot off of Southridge Road if they decide to proceed with that. So just wanted to give it a little background about sort of the overall property and also the two groups that are going to be utilizing the property.
Yeah, that's great context. Thank you.
Yep.
Anything from the DRB on this? Questions, comments?
Nope. Thank you.
Yeah.
I guess maybe for staff.
Okay.
Is the fence question really in support of the lot, the people living in the building, or is it to shield the property from the road? Does that make sense?
Great question. So the intent is private open area is private or semi-private space for the use and enjoyment of the occupant. So it would be to give them, you know, a backyard sound and visually buffered from the road. As opposed, the fence is not intended to hide or obscure this development from people passing by.
Okay. And my second question is, so the intent is to split the lots, so they'll be either side of Southridge Road. Is the land you're donating both lots, or just one, the one lot that you're building on, and
The
the other
three.
lot you'll retain?
The 3 lots on everything that's on the east side of Southridge Road will be donating those. Yes.
Good question.
Good.
Everybody else in good shape? right. If nothing else from you guys at this time, I'll open it up to members of the public. If anyone would like to address the board with a question or comment, please come forward either in person to the chair or raise your hand online. Hello?
Hi, I'm Chris Geffen. I live on Manhattan Drive as well. And so my questions are, foundationally, I'm in support of the DVH. I think they're doing a great job here. My concern is like traffic flow coming out of there. You say there's 14 spaces, or is there regular traffic going in and out of there? Or is there SSTA coming in and out?
So it's an undeveloped lot at the moment. There is an existing, what we call a curb cut from a previous residence that was there. So there's not traffic coming in and out of this, the lot that is being developed is my understanding, but I'll let the applicants go ahead.
So currently, there's no traffic currently, but with this proposed building, there'd be 9 total units. And as required under the bylaw, we have to have 1.5 parking spots per unit. And so that's how the parking gets created. I don't know that there would be...
Right, we're only proposing 10 parking spaces. And as Chris said, there'd be 9 apartments there, potentially 9 residents. They would provide, be getting supported housing services based upon the needs of the particular individual. And those might be provided by Champlain Services or Howard Center. So they would have visitors coming and going throughout the day, just like any residential dwelling would. They would also have a little bit of traffic associated with those service providers, again, based upon the needs of the resident. But it would, largely be similar to residential traffic.
Great question, and that is absolutely something that we look at PREAT. I think it's worth mentioning that the extent that this lot is being developed is not the full extent that it could be, and I'll let staff comment on that more. I don't know the exact amount it could, but I think we could 31 units. There could be 31 units there.
Yeah.
If that were the case, we would be asking for a traffic study. I don't know that we'll do that here because it's significantly less than what could be done there.
And the 9 units are to house the people who will live there? And is there permanent care provided there as part of that?
The care from our end.
It would depend upon the needs of the resident. There's likely to be a variety of residents, and they may require a variety of level of services, but it'll be up to the actual residents that are present.
I think it should also be noted that we have added a sidewalk along Southridge Road to connect to the existing from this property. So I think that's an extension of the existing sidewalk. So in terms of traffic flow or walking, there's won't be people walking within the street section. It would be on the sidewalk, and so connecting to the existing bike paths.
Right. And I remember reading an article in the Observer back in February about how half corners would kind of be considered because there's more amenities. Mm-hmm. So that the foot traffic coming from the site, are you anticipating those residents to walk to amenities from there, or it's quite far? So I'm trying to figure out, what is, are you worried about traffic or foot traffic going across the street? Do you propose any type of crosswalk?
So part of what we would be asking them for is an easement for the town at a future date to install multi-use path.
Yep.
This development is not big enough to warrant asking them to put in a section in front of it, and it would look silly, right? But something that we'll be asking for, and please comment on if you're okay with that, is are you okay with giving an easement in front to the town for a multi-use path? Am I speaking out of turn, staff?
We're close, yeah.
We're close? Okay. Well, let me let staff rephrase what we're actually asking for, because they'll do a better job.
Yeah, so they are going to be providing that sidewalk along the Southridge Road frontage. A crosswalk involving Williston Road would be a non-starter, one, because it would involve the Agency of Transportation, and functionally there's no sidewalk for it to connect to on the other side. If a crosswalk were to be proposed across Southridge Road, it would need to be done in consultation with the Public Works Department because that's an existing public right-of-way. So they would have a say over if and where a crosswalk would be appropriate. And certainly our bylaw and Public Works specifications have certain requirements around that. Separately from the conversation about sidewalks, I want to note in terms of trip generation for residential dwellings, the bylaw uses the ITE manual, the Institute of Transportation or Traffic Engineers, which conducts studies and makes assessments for every type of use: grocery stores, gas stations, doctor's office, different types of residential, and makes an assessment of what the average trip generation would be for those properties. In terms of our zoning, residential is residential. Our parking counts are done slightly different, and that 1.5 spaces per unit is a state law requirement. So homes generate different rates of traffic. Some people have, Amazon packages coming every day and people coming to clean and take care of their pets. So trip for a single family home and a multifamily home can vary widely just based off of personal preference. And those are things that the bylaw doesn't require. So what we require is for certain levels of development, a traffic study can be required. This is a pretty low threshold where a traffic study is not recommended. Any residential development is subject to transportation impact fees, and there are reductions for affordable dwellings. And those transportation impact fees go to a town fund to fund infrastructure improvements related to growth, like sidewalks, bike paths, stop signs, turning lanes, that kind of thing, when those types of improvements are warranted.
Much better answer, Emma. Thank you.
So just circling back to the sidewalk for a minute, the intent of the sidewalk, because it does stop at the first home in the neighborhood, the intent is to extend it out to Williston Road to make these homes part of the neighborhood, provide that pedestrian connection so that, as you noted, it's a long walk to Taft's Corners, but, it at least gets these residents connected to the Southridge network, which connects to the bike path, which, does link to Taft's Corners in the village. Might not necessarily be walking, but biking, but it mainly provides that connection to the neighborhood and makes this home part of the many homes in the neighborhood.
Perfect.
Public Works Director Christine has her hand raised.
Oh, perfect. Hi, Christine.
Hi, thank you again for the record. Christine Doherty, Public Works Director. I just want to touch on this topic briefly because Department of Public Works actually did have a study conducted on trying to have connectivity along Route 2 from the town village, both to the town village and to more downtown Williston, Route 2A intersection. It's constrained by wetlands. The probability of actually developing a multi-use path along that section is very low at this time, although highly desired, and that's understandable. I'm really kind of happy about the idea that the developer is open to providing an easement should that ever become available. That would certainly lower the burden and the threshold for DPW to, work for grants, or maybe plan and zoning to go for grants to make that connectivity if it was ever to happen in the future. So appreciate the opportunity. And let me preface, and I should have said this to start with, we're in pre-app. So this is some pretty in-depth conversation for pre-app. But appreciate the developer for offering that easement. If that opportunity ever arises, there's a lot of constraints along Route 2 that's been looked at for a very long time, that corridor has. Providing sidewalk connectivity to Southridge, through Southridge, there is a lot of connectivity to other parts of the community, so that would actually result in a lot of connectivity to the community. I just wanted to touch in on that as that's an area and intersection that I've really been trying to work on over the last couple of years. Thank you.
Thanks, Christine. That is very helpful. And I may have misspoke when I opened this hearing. This is definitely pre-app. This approval tonight authorizes the applicant to move forward to discretionary permit. We had a long list of discretionary permits before, so I may have misspoke. I don't remember, but yeah, this is pre-app. And does that somewhat answer your question? It's a great question.
Yeah, one other question is, after it's built, who maintains it? Who does the trash removal? Who maintains the property itself?
The owner.
Champlain Housing Trust.
Champlain Housing Trust.
Ah.
Yes, this is Kirsten from Champlain Housing Trust.
Okay. Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there, yeah, come on up, please. Perfect.
I didn't wait to be invited. I'm Doug Goulet. I live at 240 Southridge Road in Williston. I'm a butter, kind of, to this project. To the north of this project is the Southridge open space, and I'm right there to the north of that. So my backyard faces this project. I just wanted to say that I'm fully supportive of the project. I love the building. I love the use. And moving forward, I just encourage you guys to really support this. I'm excited not to have 31 units there, but to have this use. So, as you know, a lot of people show up here just to say negative things, but I'm really in favor of this project, and I think these guys have done a great job. So, yeah, that's all I
That's
say.
very helpful as the butter, for
Thank
sure.
you.
Thank you, Doug. You must have somebody else. Who's next? Come on up.
Hi, Matt Vincent, Southridge, residence of 1676 Metcalf Drive. I'm there about 8 years or so. And I've noticed that you guys mentioned it tonight also that there was no traffic request. I'm not sure really how that, I understand because it's only a 9-unit.
Sorry, 1 second. I'm just gonna ask if you two could step outside if you want. Thank you. I'm having trouble hearing. No problem. Thanks. Yeah, go ahead.
That's just a 9-unit and wouldn't create extra traffic or activity in the area. I'm not sure if the study also considers the complexity of the intersection, just in the sense that Southridge has a grade up to Williston Road, and when there's inclement weather, whether it's rain or in the springtime or ice in the wintertime, there's often slippage exiting out onto Williston Road, and also traveling west from the village. It's a downhill sweeping turn that those vehicles are often met with vehicles waiting to make a left into the Southridge neighborhood area. And although there's a curb cut there right now, it's not used, but there are times, I've had my fair share of close calls on that intersection. And I think that although it's a low unit number, and like I said, I'm not familiar with how the department to recommend a traffic study, but adding in another congestion point, possible congestion point in that area, specifically around student, school drop-off pickup, along with commuter traffic, it's quite often difficult to get in and out of the neighborhood, the area. So I think ultimately, I am very supportive of the project. I really like the DBHI and the Champion Housing Trust and the cause of the project, and I'm excited for this to be in the area. My main concern is really just over the safety of that intersection. And although it may not seem complex, it is, I think, a quite complex intersection. Also bringing the sidewalk down closer to it, brings probably existing residents or kids on bikes closer to a high-speed intersection versus where it stops right now. They typically may stay closer into the neighborhood. So just a comment or concern was there's no traffic study, and I'm very supportive and would love to see the project go through. I do think that it would probably be wise to consider a study if it can bring a signal that's like, I don't know, active during rush hours and not active during slow traffic time. Maybe bring more safety to the new residents and also residents of the existing neighborhood.
For sure, yeah, thank you, and it's certainly valid concerns. I'm not gonna make the same mistake twice, and I'm gonna just go right to staff on this. And if you could talk a little bit about how and when we use traffic studies, what does or does not come out of them, and just anything else that you wanna just fill in there.
Yeah, so what the bylaw says is, is it possible to use existing information to evaluate transportation impacts? In many cases, yes. All developments for which a discretionary permit is required must submit estimated traffic generation data based on the most current edition of the ITE manual. Beyond that, a traffic study will only be required where the DRB, with the advice of DPW, determines that existing studies do not provide sufficient information. And then the standards for traffic studies also follow the ITE transportation impact analysis recommended best practices. So what those standards generally talk about is level of service in terms of vehicle queuing and vehicle flow. So if, for example, there was a Costco in the middle of Southridge and now you have 50 cars lining up to make a left turn into Southridge Road, and they're blocking Timothy Way, and they're preventing vehicles from getting up Williston Road, that would be a level of service that's rated so low that the traffic isn't able to flow. Or if the vehicles then turning out of Southridge Road were backing up so far that they were queuing through several stop signs of traffic, that would be a level of service that's so low that an infrastructure improvement might be required. The gray area comes in more finer developments, where what we experience today and what a little bit of extra traffic adds is still within the reasonable level of service, where at the peak times of day, you might have to wait for a couple more minutes to make a turning movement, or at a busy intersection like Route 2 or 2A, you might have to wait through a light cycle or two during peak hours of day to get through that intersection. That delay doesn't necessarily mean that that intersection is functioning incorrectly. And really, those traffic standards are based on a level of service that's looking for a much higher impact than what we experience as like daily inconvenience, especially during those peak days. It really is major developments like a grocery store or a giant warehouse facility where there's going to be a lot of vehicle trips, causing backups or gridlock at key intersections. Andy, I don't know if you have anything to add about ITE traffic studies.
No, I think you've covered it. It's a functional and capacity analysis. It also does look at site distances, and in this instance, with the existing intersection of Southridge Road and Route 2, you've got good site distances in both directions, with this intersection being on the outside of the curve versus the inside of the curve. There is the left turn lane there already. There is a slight incline as Southridge Road approaches Route 2, but I would bet that that's got to be 3% or so that is in compliance with both the V-Trans standards and the town standards for the approaches at an intersection. And Southridge Road also has a left and a right turn lane out, as well as the left turn lane in. So, short of an sort of a signalized intersection, which I don't think the warrant would be met here, it has most of the elements that would mitigate traffic impacts in place already.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think that heading east towards the village, right, where there's Southridge. You know, the grade is also difficult to climb out of in winter conditions and also wet conditions, but it's also slippery and entering into Southridge, you know, the land coming in right, you know, I guess towards the curb cut of the site. Just a consideration, and I would also say that that turn two is at times you can feel quite rushed, because although you know, the viewpoint I saw on the one of the documents didn't really show the viewpoint of Williston Road looking towards the village, but it is kind of, those cars coming down at high speed do kind of pop up around that turn pretty quickly, creating folks that like accelerate faster or committed into the area. But I do recognize that it's not, it may not be backing up 2-3 stoplights. I guess I'm also just curious when the last one was done, because we get a lot of traffic that's now cutting through Southridge off of Old Stage. But we also have Northridge, and then there's a new development on Old Stage too that's coming in as well. So maybe it doesn't affect this area, because I'm very supportive of this, and I love the design, and I love the quality, and I'm really happy with it.
It's a very valid concern, and you expressed it very eloquently. I think we all have similar concerns many times. The reality is we could ask for a traffic study. What that means typically is we have to, Emily, tell me if I'm wrong, we would ask the applicant to fund that study, am I correct?
Yes, if the DRB requests it, then the applicant would have to provide it at discretionary permits.
And I see, Christine, you had your hand raised earlier, and I don't want to, I'd like to hear what you have to say if you
Yes,
can.
thank you. Thank you, Chair. I think it was captured. I think the intention there was captured pretty well. Appreciate the commenters' concerns around the amount of traffic in that intersection. That's something DPW has heard other concerns about, not related to this development, just in general. But I don't think that this development would really warrant a traffic study specifically. The line of sight and how that gets addressed is something that we will look at as part of our formal review. I just want to remind the DRB again that we are in pre-app, and that while the commenters' concerns are appreciated, I don't think this is the appropriate time to really dive into the depths of all of that. Again, DPW has, looked at this application, part of the line of sight and traffic counts. That's part of our preview, and we can discuss any potential concerns offline. But at this time, we don't have any that were noted in our comments.
Thanks, Christine. That is helpful. And yeah, I think the reality is if we ask for a traffic study, it's very unlikely to be an instigator of change. It may be, and we'll talk about this in our deliberations, it may be the right time to do one anyway, though. We may be overdue. So we will talk about that in deliberative session. Thank you for bringing that up. Did you have other questions you'd like to?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you very much.
You got it. Thank you.
And if I could ask staff a question.
Of course.
Emily, what committees would be best recourse for the public to attend and voice these concerns as far as addressing city traffic?
Yeah, that's a great question. So taking off my development review hat and putting on my other planning hat is the Planning Commission. One of the action items out of the 2025 town plan is an active transportation plan to look at sidewalks, crosswalks, bike paths, other infrastructure that's not just for cars, and working on that network so it is safe for people to get around town, all modes of transportation more easily. The Public Works Department has a traffic calming policy And ultimately, at the end of the day, it's up to the select board to fund these projects. Christine mentioned the challenges of wetlands for that Taft Corners to Village multi-use path. For something like that to be built, there will need to be local and state and federal funding involved. For traffic calming measures to take place, the Public Works Department needs to be funded to take on those projects. So other forums are the Planning Commission, the Select Board. Those are the places where public comment about future investment, future changes to facilities outside of the scope of development review are most appropriate. Secondly, I want to note that we do have one public attendee with a raised hand online.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, let's open it up to that.
Cool. All right, Robert, you're good to speak.
Perfect. Can you hear me?
Yes, please state your name and address for the record.
Sure. My name is Robert Hamble. I live at 259 Hart Circle in the Southridge neighborhood. I have 3 just quick points to bring up. One, I don't think we need to further discuss it, but I do want to also voice I have concerns about the traffic, not necessarily for the main Williston Road, but actually us accessing it and getting off. But I understand this isn't the forum, but I at least wanted it to be documented that there is additional people who are concerned. I have a question for the DRB board. From my understanding, the way that this has been presented today, it's 9 units, and it sounds like these are independent units, but in reading the proposal, this is a housing unit where there'll be offices, common rooms, and things for people to meet and receive services. And so I don't know if there's a delineation in the DRB's ways that we look at things, but this doesn't seem, and correct me if I'm wrong, as independent housing. And if so, does this fall under different requirements?
Staff?
That's a good question. Our interpretation has been, and yeah, okay, you can come on up and speak as well. Housing is housing. Where a dwelling unit contains complete housekeeping facilities, in this case they have small kitchens in them, they're considered a dwelling unit. I don't really think it matters one way or another where, if we, in terms of zoning, if it's 9 dwelling units or a senior living building with 9 units or some other assisted care facility. Our bylaw is permissive of all of those types of residences, whether it's 9 dwelling units or like a senior living type facility would be considered a commercial use. Our village zoning district allows commercial uses and treats them in the same way, in terms of parking count, landscaping, outdoor lighting, that type of thing.
Hi.
Thank you.
Marilyn Shapiro. I work for Champlain Housing Trust, and our intention is to work with Snyder and the DHI parents to make this project happen in this location, and we're very excited about that. One of the things I will offer is in many of our multifamily buildings, particularly new construction, we do include some sort of community space within those buildings so that residents can gather together or have people come over. So we may have often a small community room, and when I say community, it's for the residents of that multifamily building, and they have often a kitchenette type thing and an area to gather. Sometimes people will have birthday parties, they may invite families since these are one bedroom and 1 2-bedroom unit, not 8 1-bedrooms and 1 2-bedroom. They're small units. They are individual apartments, fully with bathrooms, kitchens, living rooms, and bedrooms. And the individual residents will have an individual lease with Champlain Housing Trust. And just like you may receive services at your home, whether it's cleaning services or services for something else, our residents will receive any services that they require in their homes as they require them. So, to me, it is just like any other apartment building, and Champlain Housing Trust does try to provide those types of level of amenity because we feel it helps to create a good community within that building. So it's pretty common for us to have some amount of that space, and occasionally we may have a property manager on site. In this case, it may
Thank you. Robert, any follow-up on that? Does that answer your questions?
Yeah, it answered my questions from the DRB. I just want to make sure that we are applying the right rules to if this was a little bit different than, 9 individual condos that were being built. I do have one concern. The conversation, I appreciate the extension of the Southridge walk and the intent there, thinking that will then funnel people in. The reality is that the Williston corridor that you see, we often see people at night walking from the Williston Road to the Taft Corners. And it seems unrealistic that someone who's going to be right on the Williston Road will then walk an extra 2 miles to get to a pathway when in reality that is not being done currently. And so if the reasoning and the rationale for the sidewalk is to get people to the Taft Corners, as they feel that's going to be something that is going to be needed, I have concerns because currently when I drive at night, oftentimes there's people walking on that road to get back and forth from Taft Corners. And so I think that should be something that should be considered if that's what the builder's reasons on putting the sidewalk there is to help funnel. That has concerns because then they're assuming people are needing to transport and walk into Taft Corners, and that may not be the best option for them.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, great point. So our bylaw requires that any development provide sidewalks or multi-use paths along existing and proposed roads. So sometimes there's sidewalks that don't go anywhere. If you drive around the industrial zoning district, there's several properties where the sidewalk is their property and then it dead ends on either end of their frontage. And the intention is to, when a property comes up for development or significant redevelopment, to have them build their piece of the puzzle for eventually network-wide connection. Or if the town is able to proactively get that Village to Taft Corners path through all the wetlands permitting and through funding and construction, then that sidewalk will, on Southridge Road, will already be there to connect, and you don't end up with, a missing connection because we didn't ask this developer to put in their section when they were under review. So functionally, when it goes in, it's predominantly going to be useful to the people living in the building, accessing the existing network of public sidewalks in Southridge. But over time, the intention is that with every development in Williston, the bylaw requires sidewalk and multi-use path construction. The reason that the recommendation for Williston Road is a multi-use path easement is in court precedent for zoning is nexus and proportionality. So if someone's proposing, 2 houses and you're asking them to build 1,000 feet of path, that's a lot of ask for the amount of development that's being proposed. Whereas it's more proportional to ask a 9-unit building to build their small segment, or the U-Haul facility to build their segment of sidewalk. So that's in balancing the nexus and proportionality. The sidewalk along Southview Road being built makes sense. That multi-use path easement also makes sense. Christine, do you have something to add too?
Yeah, Emily, I can't say it as elegantly as you just did, but as the director of public works, I have been dealing a lot with grants and trying to build sidewalks and multi-use paths all across our community. Grant funded 90% of them. They take years, 6 years right now, to try to build 1,700 feet along Route 2, or I'm sorry, 2A. I'm over 2 years in on Industrial Avenue. Taking the opportunity to have a developer construct these segments when it makes sense and there aren't barriers is really allowing the connectivity to happen at a more functional rate. Why we're not requesting, and I'm supporting this and not asking for development of the multi-use path from Public Works perspective along Route 2 is because of the corridor study that's already been conducted. It's been evaluated multiple times. It's just the current state regulations won't allow that to occur. Allowing the easement to happen in advance saves future staff time and resources, and trying to negotiate with future property owners. So again, I appreciate the concern about why we ask for developing these segments, not others. As you said much more elegantly than I will, it does help to expedite the connectivity that the community is trying to create.
Thanks, Christine. Come on up.
Hi, I'm Jen Townley. I'm 154 Michael Lane in Williston. You already have my letter. I just would like to add just a few comments. We're very thankful for the support of both Champlain Housing Trust and Snyder to try to bring this together for our families. And we are aging. Keep that in mind. I would say that 16 families that signed that document, none of those kids drive. None of those young adults drive. So it'll probably just be staff or a family member coming to visit, and even though there might be a birthday party now and then, I don't think we're going to be a big hit to the transportation from that. So I just wanted to share that. There are some adults within election with almost disabilities that do get their license, but it is a very, very small percentage. And so I just wanted to let you know that I don't think we're going to be a big hit to the transportation, but no, it's a huge need across the state. For finding another 600 units for these kids, and I know it's been in our needs assessment by Williston, and so I hope you guys will take that seriously into consideration. And I'm glad to hear that there's support from even some of the abutting neighbors. We appreciate that, and it's something that's well needed. Thank you. I hope we can support this moving forward.
Thank you for that context. Would anyone else like to address the board?
I have
Come on up.
a question. Can we go back to the map of the house?
Just have to ask you to state your name one more time.
Okay,
You didn't
sure.
get it earlier. Thank you.
So my question was fencing or no fencing? I didn't really hear whether they were thinking.
We're here to get feedback. We're not issuing a decision right now. It's not required. It's something that the board will discuss.
Okay.
Yeah, so the pre-app recommendation 1C has some bolded text. What the DRB is going to do is after the close the public hearing, they're going to deliberate, modify that text. And if you give me a call or shoot me an email tomorrow, I can let you know what their decision is on that.
Can I see that up again, Mom?
Yeah.
So I grew up here in Williston. I grew up here in Williston. My parents had a home, a small little home in the village, two little bedroom home. And then Herbie Gerber's farm, I played on because we lived right across in a little blue ranch. That was a daycare for a little bit. And now my husband and I live, so we kind of live in one house, two houses, now we're in Southridge. So I know this property very well. I'm just kind of curious to know I also go to the Catholic Church. We're very involved in our Catholic Church. So I'm kind of wondering if you're thinking of fencing, was it behind or in front?
Yeah, so the private open area would be for the fence to be, somewhere here or like here.
I just wouldn't want it to feel like it was unsightly or not in a great place, So is it just to kind of keep the parking looking, private or?
Like if the fence was there, the intent is to screen some of the private open area, so,
Okay.
like,
I'm sure you have landscaping and stuff too. So like maybe a 4-foot fence, anything higher than that? I think it would be kind of unsightly and ugly. I mean, that's just my opinion. Coming down or coming up, I think it might look like it doesn't even blend with what's across the road.
The intent would be to add value for the occupants of the house in terms of the open space. And so using that as a guideline, the DRB may or may not in deliberative session provide some guidance from this pre-app on what that might look like, but we would not be designing it. That would be outside of what we're able to do here.
Okay.
It might say something like there must be a fence for 40 feet or however many feet, but it may or may not say that. It's something we have to decide.
I mean, you get some strong wings, so you wouldn't want it like looking bad and flopping over. And so that was my concern. The other question I had is, So if this goes through and this as well, then do we need to do another one over here for the Champlain?
The other section.
Champlain housing?
That lot 2, along with lot 3, would be donated to CHD and DDHI, and it would be up to them into the future as to what they would want to do.
Okay. I'm curious, I'm just curious to know how it would all blend with the housing. I mean, I think it looks like a beautiful house. I'd like to see more. I'd like to walk through it. Okay, thank you.
Anyone else tonight? Online?
The last thing I'll add is what was discussed at the Historic and Design Advisory Committee was the intent for this to really feel like the big homey farmhouse that you see all throughout Vermont. And the consideration for those elevations, thinking about it not only from Southridge Road, but that Williston Road. So when you're around town or anywhere in Vermont, you see those big farmhouses with a lot of additions and windows. That's kind of goal is for that homey farmhouse feel here. And that's where that historic committee conversation and recommendations went.
That's helpful, thank you. We don't want to do anything that would detract from that. Is there anything else from Chris and Andy you want to add in? Good?
Not at this time.
All right, DRB?
No.
All right, well, with that, thank you, everyone. We're going to close this hearing at 9:31. Is there any other business before we move into deliberative session?
Not at this time. We'll have a meeting September 8th and pending no continuances or certificates, no meeting on September 22nd.
Okay, thank you. All right, yeah, we're good. Thank you, everyone, for coming. Thank you, everyone who spoke. Very much appreciated. The DRB will be moving into a deliberative session. All right. Welcome back to the DRB session. We have exited deliberative session. It is Tuesday, August 25th at 10:43 p.m. We are going to start out with a certificate of appropriateness. Do I have a motion for HP 2605? Yes.
Yes.
Thank you, Brian. All in favor of approving HP 2605 certificate of appropriateness at 152 Maple Road in the Village Zoning District? Please say aye.
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 Jim's here.
All in favor? The motion passes unanimously. Do I have a motion for DP 27-02?
You have a motion.
Okay, thank you. Please read the motion. Let's see, I might have it.
Do I need the second?
Not yet.
Okay.
All right. As authorized by WDB 6.6.3, I, Brian Curtis, move that the Williston Development Review Board, having reviewed the application submitted and all accompanying materials, including the recommendations of the town staff and the advisory board, is required to comment on this application by the Williston Development Bylaw, and having heard and duly considered the testimony presented at the public hearing of August 25, 2026, accept the findings of fact and conclusion of law for DP 27-02 and approve this discretionary permit subject to the conditions of approval above. This approval authorizes the applicant to file final plans, obtain approval of these plans from staff, and then seek an administrative permit for the proposed development, which must proceed in strict conformance with the plans on which this approval is based.
Thank you, Brian. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Dylan. Do a roll call vote. Chair is a yay. Jim? Jim Brisbane?
Yay.
Yay or nay? 2 thumbs up?
Yay.
Do we need that an audible or is that enough?
That's good, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Brian, Matt Fraser. Oh, sorry.
Abstained.
Abstain. Dylan Hornibrook.
Yay.
Who did I miss here?
Me.
Brian
Curtis. You read it.
Oh, yay.
Yeah, thank you. All right, 4 in favor, none opposed, motion carries. Do we have a motion for DP 27-01?
I make the motion. As authorized by WDB 6.6.3, I, Dylan Hornbrook, move that the Williston Development Review Board, having reviewed the application submitted and all accompanying materials, including the recommendations of the town staff and the advisory boards required to comment on this application by the Williston Development Bylaw, and having heard and duly considered the testimony presented at the public hearing on August 25th, 2026, accept the findings of fact and conclusions of law for DP 27-01, and approve the discretionary permit subject to the conditions of approval above. This approval authorizes the applicant to file final plans, obtain approval of these plans from staff, and then seek an administrative permit for the proposed development, which must proceed in strict conformance with the plans on which this approval is based.
Thank you, Dylan. Do we have a second?
A second.
Thank you, Matt. Is there any discussion? Okay, we'll do a roll call vote. Yay or nay?
Oh, do I need to read the edits?
Oh, sorry.
Oh, yeah, probably should.
Okay.
Yay.
Sorry, Jim. I've got to read some highlighted script here. All right. Do I just need to read from the highlight?
Yep.
All right, great. First edit being number 23, edited section, the parking lot may remain gravel. And for section 24, trip facility in the existing building or proposed office trailer. If an end of trip facility is not proposed, the cost calculations must be provided at final plans.
Thank you, Dylan. Can we get that second again for the record?
Second.
Thank you, Matt.
Second.
Thank you, Jim. All right, in that case, we're gonna vote. Chair is a yay. Jim Brzalera is a yay.
Yay.
Brian Curtis?
Yay.
Yay. Matt Fraser?
Yay.
Dylan Hornibrook?
Yay.
All right, all in favor, motion carries. Do we have a motion for DP 26-08, 518 Lincoln Hill Road?
Yeah, I motion. As authorized by WDB 6.6.3, I, Matthew Fraser, move that the Williston Development Review Board, having reviewed the application submitted and all the accompanying materials, including the recommendations of town staff and the advisory boards required to comment on this application by the Williston Development Bylaw, and having heard and duly considered the testimony presented at the public hearing of August 25th, 2026, except the findings of fact and conclusions of law for DP 26-08, and approve this discretionary permit subject to the conditions of approval. This approval authorizes the applicant to file final plans, obtain approval of these plans from staff, and then seek an administrative permit for the proposed development, which must proceed in strict conformance with the plans on which this approval is based.
Thank you, Matt. Do we have a second?
Give a second.
Thank you, Brian. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, we'll take a roll call vote. Chair is a yay. Jim Brzalera? Yay.
Yay.
Thank you. Brian Curtis?
Yay.
Thank you. Matt Fraser?
Yay.
Thank you. Dylan Hornibrook?
Yay.
Thank you. All in favor, motion carries. Do we have a motion for DP 24-06.1?
Yes. As authorized by WDB 6.6.3, I, Brian Curtis, moved that the Williston Development Review Board, having reviewed the application submitted and all accompanying materials, including the recommendations of the town staff and the advisory boards required to comment on this application by the Williston Development Bylaw, and having heard and duly considered the testimony presented at the public hearing of August 25th, 2026, accept the findings of facts and conclusions of law for DP 24-06.1, and approve this discretionary permit subject to the conditions of approval above, with the exception of striking line 20, This approval authorizes the applicant to file final plans, obtain approval of these plans from staff, and then seek an administrative permit for the proposed development, which must proceed in strict conformance with the plans on which this approval is based.
Thank you, Brian. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Dylan. Any discussion? Not hearing none. All right, let's do a roll call vote. Chair is a yay. Jim Brizzolera. Thumbs.
Yay.
Yay, thank you. Brian Curtis.
Yay.
Thank you. Matt Fraser.
Yay.
Thank you. Dylan Hornerbrook.
Yay.
Thank you. All right. On to, do we have a motion for DP 27-03, 12 Southridge Road?
I make the motion. As authorized by WDB 6.6.3, I, Dylan Hornerbrook, move that the Williston Development Review Board, having reviewed the application submitted and all accompanying materials, including the recommendations of the town staff and advisory boards required to comment on this application by Williston Development bylaw, and having heard the duly considered testimony presented at the public hearing on August 25th, 2026, accept the recommendations for DP 27-3 and authorize the application to move forward to growth management or discretionary permit review with the stipulation of the following amendments to
1C.
to 1C, which said that a private fence may be provided between the private opening area and Williston Road if proposed. The fence may be a portion of the length of the open area.
Thank you, Dylan. Do we have a second?
Oh, 2G.
Oh, and 2G. Landscape buffer may be deferred along Lot 2 east boundary. See also 41.12.2.2 for a buffer between lots 1 and 2.
Thank you, Dylan. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Brian. Any discussion? All right, roll call vote. Chair is a yay. Jim Brizzolera.
Yay.
Thank you. Brian Curtis.
Yay.
Thank you. Matt Fraser.
Yay.
Thank you. Dylan Hornbrook.
Yay.
Thank you. All right. Is there any other business before we approve minutes? Or sorry, motion carries. All in favor? Did I say that yet? All right, motion has carried. Is there any other business? No. All right. Is there a motion to approve the minutes from August 7th, 2026?
I make the motion.
Thank you, Dylan. Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Yay.
Yay. All right, yay. All right, motion carries. Is there a motion to adjourn?
I make the motion.
Beautiful, thank you. Second. Vote, all in favor?
Yay.
All right. It's past 11.